What's up, boss?
What's good? Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Peace and blessings, my guy. How you
Peace
doing
and
today?
blessings to you too. I'm good, new backdrop as always.
New backdrop as always. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
We're outside today. I'm gonna probably be leaning in and out, make sure that the sunlight is hitting just right.
See, I need those glasses. I feel like I'm just trapped in this room right now. I may have to change it up. I may have to change it up for the people next week.
It's not sunny enough to warrant these glasses, so they're coming off in a couple of seconds, but I had to enter it right,
With the glasses and everything, no, that's real. What was I gonna say? Yeah, no, I'm down to get this rocking. I think that there's a lot has happened this past week.
I'm glad we're not going to be talking about politics again. I feel like the last few, like the main topic ended up being political.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that, post elections, there's other things going on. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of what we're talking about is still political in the sense that it impacts people's lives and has to do with how shit's set up. But a little bit beyond just like an election's coming up or an election just happened, we're kind of moving back to the regularly scheduled program or something like it.
Yeah, and just chop it up about just honestly just other things. Yeah, that was that. It was getting a little bit draining, especially if we're utilizing this as a place to just free the narrative too. It does get a little bit frustrating when we have to continuously talk about the narratives that are created out there.
Exactly.
Definitely, I definitely feel you on that. One of the things that I had on mind that I wanted to talk about today was Instagram, and essentially, it's just not the same app that it was years ago, or even the same app that it was last year, or even a few weeks ago. I feel like the topic right there is I miss the old IG. Hopefully some people get a little bit of the reference of where that's coming from. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I feel like with Instagram, they're just adding features to be like this mega app compared to like, because you have of course like TikTok out there, Twitter, apps like Clubhouse, so on and so forth. But it's just like, and Snapchat, of course, but it's like Instagram is really just taking all of their features and making this into like a mega app. And it's just like, yeah, I just want my photo sharing. I just want to be able to see what my friends are posting and doing. You know what I mean? Like, even now, it was difficult for me to find out how to go on live. Like, I was struggling for a little bit too, because they just started rearranging around the different icons. And it's just more like I saw on Twitter, someone said Instagram turned into a photo sharing app to online flea market. And that's exactly the way it feels right now. And granted, like, we're having this conversation on Instagram, so it's a little bit interesting for me to be able to talk about it out there. We're obviously utilizing, but it's really making me think, like, what do they expect to happen? Do they not think that they're too big to fail? You know what I mean? Like, MySpace got caught slipping a while ago. That was everything to us at that time. You know what I mean? We couldn't have imagined social media being the way it is now. So it's just like, when I then reflect and look at what Instagram is doing, just all the changes, I feel like they've just completely moved the consumers out of the equation, and they're just focusing on like the advertisers and how. And I just feel it just feels so capitalist on this app now. You know what I mean? It's not friendly anymore, bro.
I mean, I agree. I definitely agree with you. I'm not a fan of the newest update, and I do feel like Instagram is trending in that direction of being like an online flea market, and everyone like selling something.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, though, I also feel like on the flip side of that, like growing up, like I remember like every time Facebook and Twitter made an update, it was like, why is this button here now? Why is like I feel like in general consumers tend to be more resistant to changes and more resistant to like. Like you get used to doing things a certain way. Suddenly this part's here now. Like, you're used to going on live, clicking here. Now it's somewhere else. Like, I think in general, we tend to be resistant to things like that. And then, like, for instance, like Twitter doubled their character limit, right? From 140 to 280 a while back now. And I remember when that happened, everyone was like, the whole point of Twitter is brevity. Like, why would they ever get rid of this? You know, like this whole like anti 280 stance.
Yeah.
And personally, I feel like it hasn't changed. I think it's added to Twitter where you can add a little bit more context, and like it's not really changed sort of the overall flow of it, right? So in terms of Instagram, while I do think that these changes in particular do feel a little bit more oriented towards like this flea market, like people selling themselves, I also think in general, like I've kind of, for me, I've reached the point where I'm like, any changes to an app or any updates that an app is making, like I don't necessarily want to judge in the first week of it. I want to judge sort of down the line. And I also think it comes back to like how people use these tools. And it's like, you know, in terms of
at the end of the day.
Yeah, like in terms of something being a flea market, like part of that comes from people choosing to go there and sell stuff, right? Like if people are, you know, engaging with these apps in a different way mentally, or like what their intention is to use it, then like, you know, what do these new tools have to represent that capitalist thing? Like is it Instagram that's representing it, or is it just like our perspectives and like how we use things in general, you know?
I mean, no, and I completely agree with that. But I think that it's like they push forward the change and just react and live within the space. And also too, like all of these different changes. So I have just multiple different Instagram accounts. Some of them I'm currently using, some of them I'm not at all, and I may be utilizing it in the future. And every single account also looks different in the way it's oriented. You know what I mean? So it's like all these different updates, they've already pushed out to just different groups of people, and for them just to be able to test the waters. I don't know if there's like a general now overall update, but that being said, I completely agree. Is it just a situation where did they change because of the way we're using it? But what's also going to be pretty interesting about this too, with this huge change in Instagram, because there was also a conversation about how Instagram is like taking away people's like self-confidence because they're comparing themselves to these individuals and having this idea of what perfection could be, and people are trying to strive for that because of all these photos that are just edited in this way. So I'm also curious to see if we're not also receiving content in the same way, where are social conversations like that gonna happen, you know?
Well, it's interesting because like you mentioned Clubhouse too. I don't know if you've heard of Parler, but Parler just came out as have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
So it's a new app which came out, and I think I'm remembering the name right. I think it's Parler. You know, spelled app wise, not like the regular word Parler, but it's Parler.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it's supposed to be like a competitor to Twitter, and the idea is it's a place where free speech can reign, and like, you know, you don't have to really worry about Twitter doing XYZ. But the thing is that it's funded by a lot of the conservatives who are the ones who are like getting like blocked on Twitter. So in essence, it's almost becoming like like Twitter tends to lean left. This is like a conservative Twitter, but like essentially like it just sort of like it perpetuates to try to keep the conversation going and keep the conversation more free. But instead, what it seems to be doing, or run the risk of doing, is just becoming a separate echo chamber for different people, right? So I also think that becomes part of our engagement with these apps too, is like people are congregating in different places based on certain qualities anyway, that I'm not sure, like sometimes I wonder how much these apps serve in terms of like being a place of like constructive congregation or conversation, as much as just being in a place where you're just like in an echo chamber and like really getting the same stuff. And I also feel like we tend to, like even with Clubhouse, like we tend to want to be the first ones on an app, or like we tend to move in that direction because we just like being exclusive. Like we like the idea of exclusivity. Like old IG was great partially because like it was a new app, and like, you know, like not everyone was on it and like all this stuff. And then as more people get on that, and I think that's sort of a natural human reaction too, where, you know, in some senses I feel like we're just constantly maybe going to get new apps that pop up, because as one app gets big, there's going to be natural things that come with like having more people on it and those growing pains, and then that might just cause you to react in a different way.
But then what I also think is just like, at least give us the option to decide how we want to navigate these apps. What I appreciate about Twitter is, granted, they have top tweets or like highlighted tweets, so on and so forth, but then you can also switch back over to the chronological order, and that just does so much, because then the whole landscape of Twitter would change if they just had it where it was a situation where we can only just see top tweets and we're constantly being pushed ads in front of our faces. You know what I mean? At least since they're given the options, or giving us the option for the way we want to go and navigate it, I feel like there's just more control over the way I'm able to interact with my content on these apps. But it's like, I guess if I don't own it, it's like, who am I to complain about it? But it gets frustrating though.
I mean, that was going to be my next thing, right? It's like, I think that at that point, you're just talking about ownership. And I'm sure there are, community-owned versions of these apps out there apps that are intended to solve that issue by being like a crowdsourced or like community-owned version of Instagram or Twitter. But I say that because I know, for instance, that there's a streaming service. I forget the name of it, but there's a streaming service out there which is supposed to be like the first, like, owned by the creators, Netflix. And I think I think at the end of the day, like, to your point, it's frustrating as a consumer, but we are engaging with these apps that we don't own. Like, we don't have ownership. It's funny because, like, that's what Jay-Z was talking about, right? Like, with like, Black Twitter is on Twitter and you don't own it. And like, I do think I think you just have to be conscious of it. Like, you have to recognize that aspect. And I think if there are community alternatives out there, then we should push to support those. It's just that a lot of times the issue then becomes like, you just don't hear about them. Like,
we don't hear about it, yeah. We just don't hear about it, like, because even if these apps do exist, like the marketing behind it may have not had it in this way where it gets pushed in front of our faces. So yeah, no, you're right. There's definitely stuff that's out there, and I mean, this is also just making me think a little bit more creatively about user experience and based on just general feedback in the way I about these apps, like something that I may want to work with others to build down the line, so I mean, not only could it be, I think it is going to be a good opportunity for something new, powerful, and engaging that we need for this next decade.
Man, what's your favorite app? That's what I'm wondering. Like, it's just so funny thinking about, man. Like, Vine was popping for a second. R.I.P. Vine. I was randomly on Snapchat that I hadn't been on for mad long. Yo, Snapchat got this thing now where, like, you can just see where your friends are at all times. I'm like, do y'all know that you have this on right now? Like, do you know that I can see what block you're on right now? Like,
nah, Snapchat was my favorite when they got rid of Best Friends, because that was interesting and funny in its own right. And then they made a couple of updates. I was like, all right, I'm off that. But my favorite app right now is Robinhood. That's definitely my favorite app.
I meant like social media app, or like communal app. But yeah, fair enough. Good answer.
My favorite social media app. It's definitely Twitter. I mean, because Twitter breaks the news, and also too, like, these news media outlets go to Twitter also to find out what's happening in the world. So it's definitely Twitter because I have my mixture. I'm able to curate the content that I want to see in a very unique way that's not just bogged down by advertisers. I have some of my jokes. I see a lot of things as it pertains to sports, some breaking news around the world, financials, and I can also just get a little bit of an idea of what's happening in the realm of my friends and what they're thinking.
So it's interesting.
What's yours?
It's interesting you say that because I think based on that answer, I would say mine is actually probably Reddit. Which is an underrated one, and I think one which, especially like people of color, sometimes are a little hesitant on. I think in theory because it just feels like
Glenn loves Reddit. That's one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Word. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of folks who like think of Reddit as like a place where like racists congregate, or like a place where like neckbeard type, not, I don't want to say losers, but like people who are unengaged with other humans go to congregate. And I'm sure there is some of that. But what I love about Reddit is two things. A, there's a non-anonymity that is built in where you're, like for the most part, you don't know, like I don't know anybody's username on there. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're just engaging with the content instead of engaging with just like there's a little bit of abstraction in that where it's like, I can read a comment and I don't know that, like for instance, I could have engaged with and I know there's burner accounts on Twitter, but I think because on default the default on Twitter is being yourself, the burner accounts, so you can like kind of tell there's like, oh, this is like a burner account. Like, this is kind
Yeah,
of
yep, entirely. Yep.
whereas on Reddit, like the default is sort of that. So you just get a lot more focus, I think, on the actual content as opposed to just like
Mhm.
getting caught up in who's saying the content. So that's part of it, and then I also think in general the ability to curate what's good Q the ability to curate the experience is stronger on Reddit because really what Reddit is a bunch of subreddits, which is a bunch
Mhm.
of communities, like smaller communities. So like for instance, like, you know, if you're into the NBA, you join the NBA subreddit, and like you're still getting all of the news and stuff, but like it's literally just there under this big platform. And that's true of, bro, there's any topic you can think of, it
Yeah, no, it's
exists.
gonna be all right.
You
Funny thing, funny thing that you bring up Reddit too is because whenever there's like, or whenever the NBA season's about to start, and player trades and acquisitions, so on and so forth, the place that I go to for my news and be able to start connecting dots is Reddit because I also do feel like players, NBA players, they're on there with their quote unquote burner accounts, sort of just like giving a little bit of the tea out there in order for us to make somewhat of those connections. So I definitely do appreciate Reddit for that fact at least, you know.
and even like uh if you're looking to make a purchasing decision or
Mm-hmm.
to like solve some sort of a challenge that you're facing, Reddit is a great place because you will find experts in whatever you're looking for, like
So
whether
it's similar
it's,
to that app Quora, then, correct? In a way.
I'm not too familiar with Quora, but my understanding with Quora is that it's like complete abstraction, I guess, where you're not necessarily like, I don't know. I feel like on Reddit, for instance, like if you ask a question, you know, I'm dealing with this issue in my relationship, and you know, this person did this, and I don't know what to do, or even something more directly informational in the sense of
Yep.
like, I'm doing a DIY project in the house, and I don't know like if I'm supposed to do this first or this first. You won't just get like, you'll get like a bunch of different perspectives, and you'll be able to, and then they'll get sorted through with like upvotes and downvotes, so you'll
Yep.
be able to kind of just like make the decision. I don't know how, I'm not familiar with Quora, so I don't know how familiar that experience is,
You
but
have there's like experts that are there that are like verified. So I think it's similar to Reddit in a way. You have all the different threads, people are asking questions, but I think that there's no wiggle room for like burner accounts. It takes away the anonymity or the the element that makes it more anonymous.
see, I think having anonymity sort of helps.
You heard I was trying to pronounce it, and then I was about to stutter. I'm like, let me just let me retract, and then say
Yeah,
this.
I think anonymity has some positives in it, you know.
Oh no, 1,000%, 1,000%. But that's what I'm saying. I guess there's room for it all. For everyone who's on this live right now, what do you guys think about what's happening with the general realm of these social media apps? What's some of you guys' favorites? We give it like 10 seconds to respond. Let's see what's up. Let's see what they say. All right, it's looking more like 6 seconds.
It's time for a hat switch, hat flip.
Oh, you just flipped it. Yeah, give the visuals. All right, I guess people want to be low key about. Okay, I see Twitter. Yep. And why Twitter? Twitter is always the fave. Okay, I see that. Yep. Let me just get one more response. One more response. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. Wow. Okay, that's interesting point. So some of our guests they're saying Twitter, and one of them was also said that they appreciate Twitter as their app of choice also because of who's running the app, like who's the CEO. So because of Jack Dorsey. Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of
perspective. That's interesting.
I have a lot of respect for Jack Dorsey. The thing about Reddit actually is one of the co-founders ended up dying by suicide, but he was like considered one of the golden child, I guess, of like using the internet in a productive and constructive way. And then I don't know the specifics of the story, but I guess like however it all sort of played out. Then again, isn't one of the co-founders of Reddit was with
Serena's husband. Yeah.
Shouts out to him too.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, no, that's an interesting point for Twitter. Yeah, for people looking at who's sort of managing these different apps in order to.
Alexis.
Alexis. Yeah, that's who it is.
All right, y'all got to see me have the live Reddit.
They say there's no thing.
But because it is interesting, because I do feel like Jack is more of a prominent presence than Alexis, you know.
And I really do like that point too, because with Jack, I feel like he's, even what was happening, and I know we're gonna not really discuss anything as it pertains to politics, but even when the president was just going off on a lot of these different tweeting storms, like Twitter, they, especially around election time, they got right to it just to sort of put everyone in a place where we can more so discern between truth and lies, which is pretty nice for them to be able to start flagging some of these tweets just so a different narrative is not created compared to what Facebook was doing, how they just kind of just took a step back and just say, hey guys, just like run free. So that's also a different way to look at it too. And I also do appreciate Cash App as well. So I definitely appreciate the fact that he's running both.
While we're just talking about apps, since you mentioned Cash App, why does Venmo have a feed where you can just publicly see like people's transactions who you don't even know? Like, just it's so weird to me. I never liked that. What's up, guys?
What's up? Yeah, no, the question Zim and I posed before, because we were discussing about how Instagram is just changing as an app, and the fact that a lot of these social media apps that we're using, the narrative has just changed, or the way we start utilizing it ends up being. So we were posing the question on what some of you guys' favorite social media apps. And of course, we're all on Instagram right now. So it's interesting to give a critique about an app that we're all participating on.
I'm curious who out there is on Clubhouse too, you know. What was that moment when you first got invited to Clubhouse? It's just so funny to see. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like when you're outside, you're like, Clubhouse, like, exclusive new app, like, I hope I get in. And now I'm in there and I'm like, this is cool, but like, you know.
I mean, it's a lot of it is about the perception as well.
Definitely. And I mean, that's what we were saying earlier for the folks who are just joining us, that a lot of the times we just like tend to go towards exclusivity. So Clubhouse, for those asking, and you might be able to describe it better than me, Eric, since you were the one who invited me. Yeah, I'll let you go and I'll jump in if I got.
I mean, I haven't really used it, but essentially it's like imagine a space where you can imagine. How can I explain this? Imagine Twitter threads, for example, and you can just hop in and have conversations with people. So, for example, all of us could pop in and discuss a given topic, and you can have people that just listen in on the conversation. So essentially, it's like what's happening with this IG live right now without video, and it's starting off as like invite only, and I think that's an interesting way to build the community, but it's also an interesting way to go about marketing the service as well.
It's almost like a bunch of exclusive conference calls.
Exactly. Actually, that's probably the best way.
Well, yeah, and I was only able to think about that from hearing you give me the started.
Okay.
But
that's the you feel me?
Exactly. But yeah, that's essentially what it is, and like you said, like it's by invite only. So from that, and it's called Clubhouse. So it's sort of like, you know, there is something of like, and you can even see like when I joined, you can see all the people who aren't on Clubhouse and like how many friends they have in. So it's like a very interesting, like it definitely is using kind of popularity or like social hierarchy, and like part of the incentive of it, I guess, is you can jump into a call where you know, very like a celebrity or like you know, a certain public figure, like whatever is talking, and you'll kind of have the opportunity to engage with them directly. It's all topical, so there's a lot of different, like I saw there was one about Airbnb the other day that seemed kind of interesting. There's a lot, you know, of players in the music business talking about, you know, sort of what the future of the music industry will hold, things like that. So it's definitely,
if there's a topic you're interested in, you can either find it and join a room in which people are discussing it in order to just be the fly on the wall, or you can create your own room to discuss topics that you find interesting, and people could be the fly on the wall and listen or participate in the conversation.
and actually, one of the free folk hit me up yesterday. I forgot, I haven't mentioned this to you, Eric, yet, but they were like, "Yo, do you have any exclusive Clubhouse content? Are you doing calls on Clubhouse? You know, y'all might see us on there soon."
Yeah, that could be the way. Yeah, no, my sister invited me, and her first reaction or inclination was like, "Hey, you guys should definitely start utilizing this as a space." But yeah, I'm curious to see, because also too, now to bring this back full circle, Instagram has it where at least on mine, I see where I have my general DMs, but then you can swipe to the side and it says create a room. So it's like, guys, it's like Instagram. You guys, I see you guys are continuously trying to just start posting these ideas again.
One thing which is interesting, I don't think a lot of folks know that Reddit has live video as well, and those are kind of interesting because it's basically like you start a channel, you start streaming, and they have a bunch of different. They call it Reddit's public access network, and it's sort of like, again, this like communal streaming service with a bunch of specific channels. So like one I think is like, where in the world are you, and they're showing like the cool locations you're in. Oh, damn, there's some intense squirrel action going on.
That? I was like, it's either a dog, a waterfall, or something.
Yo, this is a big ass squirrel, bro. They got squirrels out here, man. They got some next level squirrels out. Damn, what was I saying? That squirrel totally. Oh, Reddit. Reddit got public access network, which is just live streaming with different channels. But what's cool about it is that you basically get like a certain amount of time when you start streaming, and then if people upvote it and people like are you know, showing support for it or like donate to it, then that time gets extended. And then once that time. Yeah, so that's another interesting sort of approach to it that I haven't seen emulated by a lot of these other services. Which, so again, I got to give a shout out to Reddit for that one.
Yeah. I mean, you're making me want to start tapping into the Reddit communities or the Reddit realm. I'm definitely checking it out because I definitely like. It's like I appreciate Instagram because not only I discuss a lot of stuff on it with my friends and just like the seamless way we're able to share content, whether it's like NBA highlights or certain discussions that are happening in the world. But after a while, it's just like, all right, like this is this is just not me anymore. I feel like I have to do more work to find the content that I need due to the fact that they're pushing forward, and it's done purposely, content that I'm just not interested in. Even if I don't like an image or a video, I feel like they keep pushing it at the top of it until it's like, hey, did you see this? Hey, are you sure? Hey, I know you scrolled past it 7 times, but are you sure you didn't see this yet? You know, sometimes you have to just give it a like in order just for it to move. But it's like, it should never get to that point. It should never get to that place for anything that we're utilizing.
Power of the algorithm, man. Well, this I think is a good time to segue into my one thing I've been thinking about this week, which is about, you know, kind of zooming out, I guess, a little bit, because obviously like social media is how a lot of us are engaging with the internet, but zooming out a little bit to just the idea of internet access in general. So there was a headline the other day about how Justin Trudeau made a pledge to have 98% of Canadians, 98% of Canadians connected to high-speed internet by the year 2026. There was also, I'm less familiar about the second headline, even though it's in America, but I also saw that there was like recent political victories in, I want to say, Chicago and Denver, where consumers overwhelmingly voted for there being communal access to internet beyond some of the big monopolies like Charter, Spectrum, etc. So yeah, it just sort of had me thinking about internet access in general and how, you know, those of us often who have internet access and who have had internet access for a long time, it is very much like a commonplace thing for us. But there are a lot of folks who don't have that access still to, you know, what is this becoming. See, and then it's like, on one end, it's like they don't have access to this basic need. But then if you think about it past that, it's like, well, that's not really the basic need when there's also people who don't have access to food. And like, you know, the World Health Organization
But
actually
internet should be considered a utility at this point, though.
definitely.
If it's not considered a utility already, it should be considered a utility for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say the World Health Organization just said that 2021 is going to be a year of biblical famines. That's how they put it. So like, there's going to be folks who like really don't have access to the basic needs. So it is important to kind of separate those two things. But yeah, it's just like, we know a lot of the ways that that society is built to cater to, you know, people who are of a higher class. And I think like, when you are in places where you don't have to think about those basic utilities or those basic needs, you just kind of accept that as reality. But it is important to realize that a lot of folks are being affected by the fact that they don't have access to those things, especially during a time now, like where, for instance, with remote learning, like students are being left behind because they don't have access to, you know, the internet to keep up, literally, or like people are losing their jobs, etc. So yeah, basic internet access is definitely a really important thing, and it's also a shame. This is kind of vague thoughts around internet, I guess, but it's also a shame too. Like, I think as far as some of the ideas of like community access, seeing how the internet realm has become monopolized, right? Where like, people who deal with Comcast know that like Comcast is just out to make a buck, and it's like Comcast, Spectrum, like the options are so limited. Internet is such an important need, and yet there's so much like monopolization going on around it as well. So that's just, you know, been general thoughts on my mind for the week as I've seen some of these headlines.
Yeah, and I think it really just comes back to, because there's other countries that there's access to high speed internet everywhere, you know, or at least in the major cities. So I think that this is more also the conversation, like just general infrastructure that's happening in this country too. You know what I mean? Like improved roads, improved bridges, improved highways, so on and so forth. And I feel like, and I think we were talking about this before, if we really do want to be considered, and not only considered, actually be number one as it pertains to like infrastructure, healthcare, education, globally, like access to internet is going to be a must in order for it to be at this place where we realize, like, because how can I explain this? If people don't have access to the internet, and there could be a lot of people out there who, they spend a lot of time reading, and they're geniuses. I mean, they have something to contribute to this community, but if they don't have access, it's like we're also missing out on a great mind that can help us change the world in a positive way, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot in terms of a lot of fields in general, where it's like, is the person who's at the top of this field really the best person, or the other people out there who just never got the opportunity to, like, even get to rise into that, or like push into that. And it's tough. I was actually having this conversation with someone yesterday as well. I feel like there's an interesting push and pull sometimes between this idea of like anything is possible, and like, like the right positive mindset, and like going out in the world and like not being a victim and this and that, which is very real, like the power of positive thinking. But at the same time, even within that, there are still like barriers that certain people have to go through that aren't, and like that alone, I think sometimes we default to like that being the thing, but it's like that's not only it. There are other human barriers that are in place that make that not be the case. But even with those human barriers in place, we still need to like not necessarily, think pessimistically, or think that, because of those barriers, you can't get to the next level.
No, entirely. And so to bring it back to the internet access, I started thinking about, even in the city, they started replacing essentially all the phone booths with these kiosks that you can also charge your phone with. So that also provides free internet access. And I remember I was discussing this with a friend maybe like 3 or 4 months ago. They would never connect their phone to it, even if they have to charge it, because they're afraid that it's going to take some information from them, or just play in their phone, or even connect to that free internet that the city's providing as well. So that's also a different conversation about trust and mistrust, about sort of free access to these services too.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
mean,
definitely multifaceted.
yeah, and then you start getting into like privacy and
Yep.
security. I mean, cybersecurity is a very real thing right now. I feel like there's a headline every other week about how hackers hacked into XYZ, and like we don't
They
even.
won't hack into these student loans though, right? That's crazy. That's one thing that they won't do, which is
Well, you know,
wow.
a lot. I mean, the internet. A lot of them. The end game of, especially internationally. You know, what I'm saying like, what. It's not necessarily in the best interest of a country that's looking to make America, you know, less stable.
Yeah. To start,
Yeah.
to free us from our student loans. That's funny. Now, what's not said understood. That's real. That's valid. But yeah, no, that's interesting about internet access, and I think that Elon and also I think Mark Zuckerberg, they were talking about, I don't know who it was actually, putting mini satellites in the sky to give different demographics and populations across the world access to internet. But then what is that going to do for us whenever we do look up and we want to see the stars? Like that can also distort our actual view of space in the night sky. So it's like, to what degree are we willing to sort of allow these infrastructures or allow these different services to be put out into the world, but then also affect us in a way that we may not foresee right now,
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think too, just like it's so interesting that, for instance, there are amongst us, there are folks who are like, I think me and you have both been in this place where it's like, I need to take a break from the internet, or like, I need to like just log off,
Yep.
And at the same time, there are people who don't even have that access. And I think that, to me, is where we really need to recognize the big difference between like what a need is and what a utility is. Cause it's like, you never wake up and like, I'm just going to take, well, I mean, we've done like, fast and things like that, but like, I need a week off of just eating and drinking,
Yeah.
No, whereas with something like the internet, it's like there are people whose lives are being challenged by not having access to it, and then there are those of us who have access to it who are like who are binging on it, who can't even like keep it into the reality of like, this isn't reality, like this isn't an add-on to reality. And I think a lot of times as we explore new technologies, that we run the risk of that, where it is sort of like we OD on the technology without necessarily being like, how does this fit into the reality of like, every day, like natural reality.
Entirely. Yeah. Sure, that was good. I don't know if I have too much else to say about internet access until until we can also. I'm just curious. I'm curious to see the way 5G will also play in this realm. But does 5G even matter if not everyone has even access to it? You know what I mean? Like, is a sacrifice? Would we rather have people have access to at least 3G? We don't get a faster internet service until the rest of the world is online.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it's just, that's where it kind of comes back to like where we're investing our time and our resources.
And also, one other question too: is it also very important to have people not online as well? Because I feel like that still leaves society and essentially just us as humans in this way, where those individuals can also just go about their day more traditionally in the way that life has been lived for the past hundreds and thousands of years too. And I feel like that's also.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about internet access, it has to be like people who want and need it, not people who just
not
don't
forced
have
down.
Yeah, you can't be forcing it. But yeah, I feel like it just comes down to like where we allocate our time and our resources, and like a lot of times we do continue like adding on to like how futuristic and how technological we can get without necessarily putting that same effort and intention into making sure basic needs are met. So it is sort of like, yeah, we're gonna have 5G before there's gonna be people who have access to food and water. Like, and that shows on one end it kind of shows where like I think it just shows how like it's not necessarily the responsibility of the people who are focusing on these futuristic things to focus on these other things, but I do think that there is a lack of connectedness that makes things like that possible, where it's like if we really were, you know, like this like human family that we aspire to be and whatnot, then it would be a sense of like, wait, why do we need this when people don't have this, you know?
Yep, that's facts. Yeah, shit. Oh, that was good. No, that was. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad this week we were able to sort of veer away from chopping it up about the election and all the
Same.
this is definitely the things that are more so on the top of my mind on the day-to-day basis. And I know for a fact it's these type of topics are on the top of your mind as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it was wasn't I feel like there was some weeks there's just so much like random stuff going on. Like this week was not too much, but it definitely was some stuff going on in the internet world.
Yeah. Do you have any Sunday shoutouts?
Sunday shoutouts. Not particularly. I mean, I'm gonna be on my Celtics vibe for a second as a Boston, as having grown up in the Boston area, and say shout out / rest in peace to the legendary Tom Heinsohn, who was I knew him strictly as a announcer, like, you know, broadcast announcer / commentator, but you know, originally was a player and then a coach, and just sort of embodied that sort of Celtic spirit. But I would say, like, you know, beyond that, like I've because since I was a big fan or like a big supporter of his when he passed away, like I definitely read a lot of the articles, and like, you know, the other commentator who he was always commentating with was telling stories, and like it seemed like he was also just a really like showed a lot of love, you know, like the type of person that you would want to be like. There was a story of, you know, his commentator got married, and like for a year they hadn't gotten a present, and it was like, did he forget about the present? And then it turns out that like during the wedding he had like snuck out, snapped a couple photos of the venue, and had spent a year like painting the venue for them, and like this like hand drawn like using paint. So yeah. So I don't know. So he comes to mind, I guess, as a Sunday shout out / a Sunday, you know, farewell to the legendary Tom Heinsohn.
Yeah, I would think mine is a little bit on a similar line. Shout outs to Alex Beck, our man at Jeopardy. I mean, there's just countless of evenings in which like I'm watching Jeopardy with like my grandparents growing up, and yeah, he was always just a figure for just like nighttime entertainment, and it was entertainment in a way where it's like we all didn't have the answers to these questions, but we'd still try to guess it, you know, and make a game out of the fact that we didn't know, and being able to just see the level of dedication that he's also had, because a lot of these, I mean, that show's coming on daily, and it's pretty impressive to just see someone so present over these years, you know what I mean, and consistently being that individual at their job, and sort of giving a form of entertainment that's just educational. That's not just how can I explain it? Giving us a form of education that allows us to utilize our mind, and since it also wasn't cable TV as well, that's also very powerful too. Because you take that access, you know what I mean, to be able to watch that show.
I mean, he was just a warm personality, man. I think like when people warm personalities, when, you know, like folks who bring light,
yeah,
you know, no longer have that light. For me, it's always like I want to be able to do that in my own version of that light. I'm not Alex Trebek, but I want to be the best version of me. Like I want to be the version of me that Alex Trebek was of himself, you know. So
exactly.
Shouts out to them. Rest in peace to them.
Rest in peace to them for sure.
Hey, what's good, Mish? I'm about to see you inside in like 2 minutes.
All right, peace and blessings, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. We will catch you again next week. I think it'll be the same time, but we shall see. Appreciate it.